All right, so let's jump into today. Today is 9.6 using intercepts. If you have the notes printed off, everything that you see except for the graph is already in your notes. So we're just going to talk through that. If you do not have the printed version of notes, you're welcome to do that. It's a PDF that's available. If you don't have a printer, you're just going to use paper and a writing utensil and get this written down. So 9.6 using intercepts, we are going to learn another way to graph lines. Sorry, we're going to find another way to graph lines. Now, we have used an XY chart. Today, we're going to learn about using intercepts. Tomorrow, we're going to learn a third and final method, and then we'll wrap everything up on Friday with a review. So, today, let's take a look. We have two definitions here. We have the definition, and you'll notice that I switched to my overhead camera. First of all, I didn't have it. It just came in from Amazon. And then secondly, we're getting into more parts of our lessons where you really need to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm excited. Hopefully, you guys like this better too. So the x-intercept is the point where a line crosses the x-axis, okay? So if we look at this graph here, the x-intercept is right here. And if you'd like, I'll label these. This is the x-axis, right? This is the y-axis. The x-intercept is the point where a line crosses the x-axis. So we'd say 6, 0 is the x-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where a line crosses the y-axis. Here, right? So today, we're going to take that. We are going to find the x and the y-intercept. We are going to plot them, and then we are going to draw our line through them. And that's how we're going to graph. Now, you might say, well, how do you find the x and y-intercept? Well, I think you guys actually already know. Going back to 9.1, and if you look here, we notice the pattern again. When we have a point on the x-axis, we notice that the y is 0. All right, so I'm going to write that in our notes. If we have an ordered pair, and it's an x-intercept, the y value is going to be 0. Okay, we're going to find this in a little bit. And then when we have a y-intercept, when we have a point on the y-axis, we notice that the x value is 0. So remember, it's flip-flopped. When it's on the x-axis, the y is 0. When it's on the y-axis, the x is 0. Okay, so we're going to take this information, x-intercept, y is 0, y-intercept, x is 0, and we're going to use it to graph lines. So let's move to our first example. You have it in your notes if you printed them off. If not, copy it down. 3x minus 2y equals 12. And now we're going to do what we were just talking about. We're going to find the x-intercept and plot that point. And we're going to find the y-intercept and we're going to plot that point. Now, according to our notes, we know when it's an x-intercept, the y is 0. And when it's a y-intercept, the x is 0. So we'll plug 0 in for y, see what the corresponding x is. We're going to plug 0 in for x and see what the corresponding y is. And we'll have our 2 points and we'll be ready to graph. So let's start with the x-intercept. Let's plug 0 in for y. So if I bring down our equation here, we have 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 12. Now we just need to simplify. We have 2 times 0. We know 2 times 0 is just 0, so it goes away. This minus or subtraction was on this, so it goes away as well. So we're just left with 3x equals 12. To solve this, how do you get x by itself? This is definitely review. Divide both sides by 3, and x is 4. So when y is 0, x is 4. So we have the point 4, 0 is on this graph, or on this line. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to plug 0 in for x. So we have 3 times 0 minus 2y equals 12. So 3 times 0 just goes to 0, so we can get rid of it. Don't forget to bring this sign down. Negative 2y equals 12. We divide both sides by negative 2, and y equals negative 6. So, sorry, my voice is a little screwy today. X is 0, and when x is 0, y is negative 6. So we now have 2 points. Now, when we did the XY charts, we found 3 points, but technically, we only need 2 points to make a line. So let's bring in our coordinate plane here. And again, if you printed these off, you have those coordinate planes. If not, you're going to have to draw one. So we have the x-axis, we have the y-axis, and I'm going to plot these 2 points, 4, 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's 0, right? It's on that x-axis. It is an x-intercept. That's what we wanted. The y-intercept now, 0, negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I went down 6, and I have the y-intercept. All I have to do now is take the x and the y-intercept and use a straight edge to connect them into their line. Arrows on both ends, just like before. And there we have graphed using the intercept method. All right, let's move to our second and final example of the day. You see it there, x minus 4y equals 10. I do want to point out, this looks a little bit different than what we've seen before. We used to have the y on a side by itself, but that doesn't affect us at all. We could solve for y, we could get y by itself, but when it's in this form, this is called standard form when we have it set up like this, x, y, and then a constant over here. It's easier to use this method. So let's jump into it again. We are finding the x and the y-intercept, and we're going to use that same setup as we did before. If it's an x-intercept, we know what about it? It has a y of 0, and if it's a y-intercept, we know it has an x of 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for x, 0 in for y, and we'll have those 2 points. Be careful. It's really easy to switch these around, and then whatever the value is supposed to be down here, we end up putting it up here. So double check that you're plugging in and writing that correctly. So put 0 in for y here. Now, I do want to point something out. We can show all of our work, and that's really the safest way to do any problem is to show all of your work. But one other way that you can do it is using what we call the cover-up method. Because think about this. If we have 0 in for y, that's going to get rid of this whole thing, right? So we cover that up because it goes away, and we have x equals 10. Okay? And that's what we get out there. Now think about this. If we plug 0 in for x, that means this whole term goes away, and now we'd have to solve here. So it will work, but I'm going to show work to be safe. So I'm plugging 0 in for y. So we have x minus 4 times 0 equals 10. This whole thing goes away, and we have x equals 10. Notice we didn't have to solve here because there was no coefficient on x. So we have 10, 0 as our x-intercept. All right, moving to our second and final example here, we are going to again find the x and the y-intercept. So I'm just going to get those set up here, just like you'll do in your homework. Now, first thing we need to do is find the x-intercept. We know, and this is still true from before, when we have an x-intercept, we know that the y is 0. And when we have a y-intercept, what do we know? That the x is 0, okay? So we're going to plug in. Now, before we do this problem, I quickly want to talk about some people, when they do these problems, they don't show all of their work. They use something called the cover-up method. Now, I'm not really recommending you to use this. It's a good way to check your work, but I'd like to make sure that you are showing work, not making mistakes. So I'm not saying you can't use this, but be careful. It's easy to make mistakes. If we plug 0 in for y, this whole term goes away, and what we can do is cover it up. It goes away, right? And we're left with 3x equals 15. Well, we know we can divide both sides by 3, and x equals 5. Okay, so the point here is going to be 5, 0. We can do the same thing for our y-intercept. If we plug 0 in for x, this whole thing goes away, and we're left with 5y equals 15. Divide both sides by 5, and y is 3. All right, I'm going to quickly show you the work that goes with this, but do know that that is a possibility there. So if we have 3x plus 5y equals 15, we're plugging 0 in for y, okay, and that goes away. We have 3x equals 15. We divide both sides by 3, and x equals 5. So we have that point, just like we talked about, but now we have the work to back it up. Coming down here, instead of x, we're going to put 0 in. So we have 3 times 0 plus 5y equals 15. 3 times 0 just goes away to 0. So we have 5y equals 15, divide both sides by 5, and we get what we said we would, at y equals 3. So when x is 0, y is 3. Once you have your x and y intercept, you're ready to graph. So let's plot these points. 5, 0, over 5 on the x-axis, and 0. So that's our x-intercept. That's where it crosses the x-axis. Our y-intercept, 0, 3. 1, 2, 3. And we have those points found. Now I grab your straight edge again and draw your line, arrows on both ends. And that is how we use intercepts to graph our equation. All right, so that is it for Wednesday. You made it through another lesson. So now you have your homework assignment. It is attached again in a PDF. So if you have a printer, you can print it off and do it. If you don't have a printer, you'll get a piece of paper out and do the problems on paper. Now you are going to need coordinate planes for this, and remember, you can draw them. So if you don't have a printer, you can draw them. If you have a printer, it'll make it just a little bit easier, but it'll work either way. Just a few notes. Go ahead and send a picture of that to me in an email. If that's not possible, let me know. But most of us, so if you're not in the category of having a smartphone, then it's not going to work, but most of us have smartphones, and that'll work. If you have the Outlook app on your phone, it's really slick to send them. If not, you can figure out another way to do that, and there are ways to do that. So, let's see, what else do we need to know? You may have noticed if you got your assignment back in your email, I tried to be pretty snappy with those. But if you missed one, I noted which one you missed and that you needed to fix it. That's going to be the same for this assignment. My goal is that you're learning this. My goal is not about your grades, all right? It's hard enough to cross the barrier of not being together and trying to teach you something. So, make sure that you make those corrections, because that's an option, and I'm giving full credit back for those corrections, and it should just be a quick process. I let you know if you missed any, and if you did, you go back and fix them. You'll notice that today's assignment is just 3 problems. Again, we're cutting it down, trying to make it simpler. Tomorrow, just to let you know, you're going to learn another graphing method, and you're going to have 3 more problems, so just be aware that that is what's coming down the pipeline. Again, if you have questions, let me know. The best way to let me know if you have questions is through email. There's so many ways. I have students talking to me. I have them commenting on Edmodo. I have some of them messaging me on Edmodo. I have some people commenting on the YouTube videos, and then I have some people emailing me. And you can do all of that, and I'll try to get to all of it. But if you're really wanting an answer, if you send it to my email, I'm basically from 8:30 to 3, I'm just sitting right by there and getting those sent back as quick as possible, because I know when you're trying to get stuff done, you need responses, okay? So I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability. Let me know if you have any feedback, if there's something that I'm doing that maybe isn't working quite as well, or you're not understanding it this way, or if there's something that is working well that you'd like to continue to do, let me know. So when you submit those answers, that's something you could type some feedback, or maybe even feedback from your parents. So if your parents have any feedback, they can add that in, and I'll also put that in the email. So let's get to it and have a great Wednesday. See you later.